Ready to go?
Yes.
Okay, the December 9th, 2024 City of Flagstaff Open Space Commission meeting is hereby called to order. And we'll start with roll call. Commissioner Thomas.
Present.
Commissioner Norton.
Present.
Commissioner Fox. Present. Commissioner Wallen.
Here.
Commissioner White. Here. And Council Member Representative Harris. It does not appear to be online. Next is the land acknowledgement statement. The Flagstaff Open Space Commission humbly acknowledges the ancestral homelands of this area's indigenous nations and original stewards. These lands, still inhabited by native descendants, border mountains sacred to indigenous peoples. We honor them, their legacies, their traditions, and their continued contributions. We celebrate their past, present, and future generations who will forever know this place as home. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the October 28, 2024 minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. The minutes are approved. Next is public comment. At this time, any member of the public may address the commission on any subject that's not scheduled before the commission on this day. The Arizona open meeting law prohibits the commission from discussing or taking action on an item which is not listed on the prepared agenda. Commission members may, however, respond to criticism made by those addressing the commission, ask staff to review a matter, or ask that a matter be placed on a future agenda. To address the commission on an item that is on the agenda, please wait for the chair to call for public comment at the time that the item is heard. Are there any members of the public that wish to make a statement or address the commission on something that is not on the agenda?
Just a couple updates. I wanted to mention to the commission for the commission benefit that the commission Wallen has to leave at 4:45 today.
Okay, great.
And then I also want to introduce our open space assistant, Cole Lang. Cole, if you want to come up and introduce yourself. Cole is our newest AmeriCorps member. He is with the Environmental Literacy Program, and he's working with Passion. I'll let him talk a little about himself.
Yeah, pleasure to meet you all. So my name is Cole Lang. As Robert has said, I've graduated from NAU School of Forestry the last spring, and I'm currently completing my accelerated master's while working with City of Flag with my AmeriCorps position. Happy to meet you all and really hope to make more connections with the schools and professional partners during my term here. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Now, we're really excited to have Cole here. He's helping Ashley with implementation of the education program, so we're super excited to have that.
Awesome, thank you. Number 6 item on the agenda is our business items, and the first on that list is the regional plan review and recommendation. And I believe, Robert, you gonna take that, or Commissioner?
Sure, yeah, I can just start it. Yeah, so at our last commission meeting, we discussed that the Flagstaff regional plan 2045 is open for a 60-day review period. And the commission was invited to provide comments, recommendations on that. The open period closes on December 19th. So I know some of you had a chance to review that regional plan and provide input. Commissioner Clark has been compiling that input into a formal recommendation. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to him, and I'll throw it up on the screen.
I appreciate everybody who submitted comments and both in the plan and itself on the electronic magic, and then those who sent them directly to me or to Robert. And Robert is getting that document up. This is the draft document, so for reviewing comments, editing, deletions, all that kind of good stuff. It's in Word, so we can make changes on the fly. Good line changes. So, whole description of how I approached it, and I got two two sections, one strengths of the plan and improvement opportunities. As with most things, it's easier to find fault with something than it is to find items to praise. And it's reflected here in this list. Also, most of the comment, let me rephrase it. Some of the comments apply to the plan in general, because those general kind of comments influence particular chapters as well as the particular chapters of interest for us, 7 and 8. But I tried, and people were really good about focusing their comment on the material in chapters 7 and 8. These are not in any order in terms of where in the plan they fall, nor are there any priorities set to these comments. So one of the strengths of the plan, Robert, you can just scroll up a little bit. You can get all those strengths, in one screen there. The strength was that of the 5 priorities, protecting significant cultural resources is one of them. That was the strength. Putting all the pros groups together is good. It not only reflects the reality of the organizational structure, and in that way it allows those interactions among those different functional areas to work together. One that came through in lots of places, not only the comments that were sent to me, but in the plan itself from other folks, was the high priority land acquisition and the J.W. Powell corridor. There are other comments about the value of that corridor, but that's not really part of our world. There was a noticeable attention paid to the importance of providing recreation and open space across the city, especially in the southwest quadrant of the city, sort of south of 66 and west of I-17. There's this very specific in chapter 8, very specific time between the implementation guidelines and the updated management plan for open space. So help avoid any confusion about how those guidelines should be used. One that was brought up a couple of times in different contexts were recognize the importance of state lands in the acquisition of open space, and that we all know that most open space is, or most state land is put up for sale and is sold to the highest bidder. There are some exceptions to that. The process of acquiring Picture Canyon was somewhat of an exception to that. But that state land, which rings the city, is an important potential source of open space. However, at the same time, it's a very, very important potential source of land for housing. So there's an inherent potential conflict there. And then the acknowledgement that the housing crisis, we need more housing. In some ways, it's simple. but not really. So, folks have heartburn or problems, would like clarification of any of these? Or to add or delete any of these?
I have my own personal feeling and understanding and research tells me that building houses is the only way out of a housing crisis in a place like Flagstaff, where outside investment drives the housing crisis because of the desirability of Flagstaff. And they're building more out, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't build more housing, I'm just saying that we shouldn't rely on building more houses, assuming that building more houses will drop the housing price. Did I say that correctly? I'm not saying we shouldn't build more housing. I'm just saying acknowledging that building houses is the only way out of a housing crisis, assuming that's the cost of housing in Flagstaff. And I don't think Telluride or Durango or many of the other mountain towns that are small are finding that building more houses has reduced the cost of housing simply because it's a great investment opportunity. So I personally can't acknowledge that, but if the commission wants to acknowledge that, then that's fine.
I think I think what we're doing here is evaluating the plan, not necessarily the value of each individual statement. So like, for example, I recognize that was one of my comments. Maybe I'm the only one that made that comment. I was simply saying that I think a strength of the plan is an acknowledgement that housing inventory does play a role in getting out of a housing crisis. Not evaluating that statement on a standalone basis, whether or not that is in and of itself inherently true. I'm saying that I thought a strength of the plan was that they acknowledged that because the plan's focus is on land use and land apportionment. And so recognizing that that is a piece of the problem is, from my perspective, a strength of the plan because it was holistic and it considered all land uses and it was not exclusively focused on a couple of things. So I was just trying to say I thought the plan was good because it acknowledged this is a big part of land use and land zoning and land apportionment in the city. And that's what the plan was trying to address. So that's why I thought it was a strength. I understand your point, and we could probably debate that. I was just trying to say I appreciated that they took that into consideration.
How about if we just strike only?
Sure, yeah, I have no objection. No objection.
Anyway.
Yeah, no objection.
To add to that, that kind of strikes me in a funny way about the housing crisis, and maybe I'm misunderstanding maybe some of the direction that you received from Sarah and everyone at the last meeting, since I wasn't here, and thank you for the great minutes that describe that process. Are we supposed to be giving our review within the context of this commission primarily? Or did they really want an overview of the plan? I think there's plenty of opportunity, and throughout the plan and throughout all the review opportunities to acknowledge the housing crisis. I think what we sometimes experience on this commission or open space and parks and rec is that inherent conflict or balancing act between housing, open space. And in my personal opinion, I'd rather see us be a strong advocate and representative of the needs for open space and parks and rec, as opposed to calling attention to the needs for housing, just within the context of this commission. That's my thought.
I mean, it's one of the positive things that I thought was in the plan, kind of goes along with this, which is it's really important that we have open space in future development, and that there's acknowledgement that access is to open spaces. And I think there was a term like community parks or urban parks, you know, that was discussed in future development. So maybe a recognition of that, the fact that building houses is one of the ways that a housing crisis, but the fact that they recognize that and include the term, there's language in there about urban parks, which is the same as open space, and then not everybody agrees with what an urban park is, but like, just acknowledging that if we're gonna have one building, then we also want more parks. And that's in the plan. It does say that. Trying to tie it all
Yeah,
together.
no, I like that angle and that we're acknowledging that with housing and with the effort of housing potentially comes parks and open space, and that there could be some, that there's a collaboration acknowledged, challenges acknowledged, within the plan, and maybe look at it that way.
One of my negative ones, which we're not gonna talk about right now, but is that I didn't read much about like making sure that in future developments that there's access to current existing forest service open space, neighborhoods, whatever. I didn't understand what the greenfield term meant exactly. I didn't have it defined, but I wish it was. But making sure that in the acknowledgement that building houses is a way out of the housing crisis of Flagstaff, that we also provide access to what currently exists and could exist to the whole public of Flagstaff. So that's kind of a negative and positive, but I think acknowledging that housing is going to occur and it's in the plan and it's in black and white is really important, and we just need to spin it so that it includes access and having those resources available to the public, no matter what happens to the resource.
I understood the assignment to be to, and maybe I misunderstood it, like to evaluate the overall strengths of the plan, not just a parochial look at how much or how little open space was advocated for. And I would argue it's not necessarily our role to always advocate. There are times when open space, which is part of a larger holistic experience for all of our citizens, might be in conflict with other values that are equally or less important. It just depends on the moment. So sometimes, in this particular advisory role, which is what I think we essentially are as an advisory body, there may be times when the open space value plays second or third fiddle to some other larger value. And I don't know what that is. So I think being able to recognize that from my perspective is just as important. And so I was looking at evaluating the strength of the plan overall, not just how it addressed open space. I tried to focus on that, but, I just called out things that I thought were a benefit or a detraction from the overall plan. So if the focus was supposed to be just on open space and how that's addressed, then comment number 7 is probably out of scope. But if it was to evaluate the overall plan, then I think it's appropriate. But that, again, that's my point of view.
Along that line, I looked at it as a open space commission and our responsibility as to do the open space. And so I looked at outside the specific open space chapter, how is open space either neglected or mentioned or even prioritized. So 7, my feeling is the house is prioritized way over everything else. And then comes transportation. And then everything, and transportation has to do with climate. And then after that, everything is kind of there, the words are there. I didn't feel like there was any real connection to the rest of it. So that statement by itself, I would support what the plan is saying. And I'm not necessarily, and so I'm not, it just bothers me. And one way out, if we want to keep that statement in, is as I say, that the only way out is a way out of, I don't believe it is, but is a way out of a housing crisis. But trying to figure something that merits it in there related to open space. Balance or something, some word that
something about the strength of the plan is that it recognizes the value of open space and housing development.
And the need for.
Is that
I like that, yeah. I think that addresses that development's going to happen. We need development in houses. But there's also an opportunity to have open space with it, developed with it. Do we feel that the plan has represented that enough? That could be a question as well. Does it still become a strength if we don't feel it's represented enough? That
It's in the plan though.
It does recognize it various places.
Feasible. I like that phrasing if you can remember it.
Robert, what is the intended use of this? So like, what's the goal? We do this exercise. What happens with these findings that we come up with?
I think these recommendations are shared with the committee and then they can take that, under advisement for like modifying the plan.
So these would then go to the regional plan committee. They would, so each commission doing a similar exercise where we're all commenting on?
I think each commission can make their own decision.
Can,
whether or not
okay, so maybe they are.
recommendation.
Okay. So
I think they specifically came to the open space commission because it is like a land, it's like a regional plan for land use, right? So it kind of falls right in line with things.
gotcha.
And in our meeting last month, we decided that instead of us all making individual
Right.
comments, that we just send them to Commissioner Fox.
Does somebody want to provide some like wordsmithing for an independent?
A strength of the plan that it recognizes or the strength of the plan is that it recognizes the importance of open space in housing development
in areas of new development.
and any development.
Mhm.
We could probably drop strength of the plan, right? Because that's the top there, because probably start with the plan recognizes the importance maybe.
Yeah.
Could I say any development instead of just new development? Because we could talk about corridors and.
Do improvement opportunities. Term I always use in class, English, it's,
Oh my gosh, there's so many.
as I said, it's way easier to criticize something than to provide positive reinforcement.
You want to lead us through this, Mr. Brooks?
This is the first one, short never used jargon. This came up from commissioners in going through the document. Other people had commented on this. I found the same thing. A lot of, and along with that, number two is that key term like significant. Were defined, but it was way back in like 7 or 8 where that term was finally defined, and then it was sort of a circular definition. It's significant because we think it's important. therefore it's significant. Okay. Very little connection to me between recommendations, the whole structure of the plan, the effects on the private sector and for potential partnerships. I'm saying it doesn't have any, but it seems that, and I know this is a plan for the city and not for everybody, but it seemed that the private sector was more or less ignored. And especially when we're talking about housing, that's not a good thing to do. So private sector is really the one that's going to provide most of the housing one way or another. And number 4 is also mine. I think it's good.
Yeah, Bruce, three, this underlying, the implication is, for preserving open space and trails and access, because private sector potential partnerships is really high on the community development thinking. But in the case of the Open Space Commission, more clearly and strongly connect plan recommendations to potential effect on the private sector, but effect on the private
Yes.
sector.
I'm not going to, that's a formal wording.
I think that when I read this, what I was expecting to come to the end and say, yes, there's got to be a lot of partnerships between private sector and the preservation of open space and trails and access. And that's how I brought it into commissions.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Well, number 7 kind of said that.
How about we put in, because edit number 3, and we get down to 7, it's the need 3. It may not.
Okay,
Do you want to provide some words on page number 3?
Well, this is back open space.
and I think access is going to be a big deal. And there's, it has to be, so.
Number 4, especially implementation, there were lots of should do this, should do that. But not very much, at least to me, in terms of, well, and if we do this, where's the content of different actions? The one that really struck me was view sheds. But there's a little bit about, okay, there was some, it hits on the current direction and with providing view sheds, protecting view sheds, and how that influences the potential fuel hazard, also impacts density of development. And I like that one. I just like where it did talk about the effect of different things, but I just didn't do that very much. It's sort of, let's do this, let's do that. And not much in terms of what are the impacts or what the effect of doing this? Classic one that I didn't think was addressed very much. Okay, if we increased housing density, how does that influence open space? And it really was, I didn't see much. I mean,
I have, and I don't know how you do it in a plan, so it's not criticizing the effort. But how do you connect preservation of view sheds, open space? When I say preservation, I don't mean it's gonna be view sheds everywhere, there's gonna be everything different. But how do you link those values with building houses, building higher buildings, all of that? There's a balance, but in a plan, how do you express that balance? Been able to see that the previous plan, and you can write this down, I think was overboard in terms of the environmental protection. And it made it very hard for a planner to do things. I feel like this one seems to be, it's like the wave sloshing back to the other side. And somewhere in between, there's got to be a way to make them all balance out. So that's a general thought. It's not a solution.
I mean, for me, it's recognizing the kinds of inherent conflicts and just having them out there very, very clearly, not that they can be solved in the plan, but recognizing that this is an issue that needs to be, or doesn't need to be, but it's important to address. That's all I would probably. Not just the recognition of the issue.
I would agree with you very, very strongly. And I like the way that you articulated it. I had a lot of different thoughts about it, but I think ultimately all of them were pointing towards the inherent conflict between some of the things that the plan talked about. And I kind of would encourage them to lean into this controversy and lean into the inherent, like, hey, these do seem contradictory. Like, in one hand, we got to build higher density, more housing. On the other hand, we're trying to preserve view sheds, open space, et cetera. And rather than kind of just gloss over it, maybe lean into it a little bit more and highlight those. And to your point about like linking the value, I don't think they did a good job of doing it. But reading between the lines, from my perspective, the overarching goal here is, you know, a place where the citizens of the city have a high quality of life. And that means secure and affordable housing and access to open space. And both of those things complement each other, and one without the other makes a place less valuable and less, from a you know, quality of life perspective, for most folks would lower that, right? Like, oh, my house is affordable, but I don't have any place to sort of enjoy the outdoors or device. I got plenty of open space and view sheds, and then I got to go sleep in Williams. Right, like, so those,
Sure.
That's how I would link them. But I agree with you. I don't necessarily think they did a good job of showing like a thread of like kind of quality of life through them. Everything seemed to be sort of siloed, like issue, quality housing, issue, open space, issue, instead of this interconnectedness. So long way to say what you two said, but those are both really good comments that I didn't think about it. I appreciate that viewpoint.
Can I look up at 3 again, please? And then we'll change the first one.
So I was hearing in number 4 that there might be some interest in making it more specific according to like density versus open space and view sheds, and retaining like a balance and like linking the value between like housing and open spaces. Somebody want to try to wordsmith it to include those, that kind of.
Like acknowledging the inherent conflicts or challenges between higher density and preserving natural resources,
Accessible natural resources.
yeah, including open space and view sheds. And I completely agree with the discussion. um, That that this conflict continually comes up and is a continual challenge. And I think sometimes the housing crisis and the efforts to do that, there's a great need for it, obviously, but there's also, sort of a public outcry about, well, what about all the natural resources that everyone enjoys here or moved here for, trees that use access to trails and open space. And I absolutely think that that needs to be addressed and acknowledged and, um, challenged.
And preside, just acknowledge it. Just put it out there so that everybody, but folks know that, and if it's not made front and center,
Yeah.
then folks are gonna say, what?
Yeah, it seems a little intellectually dishonest not to just say like, this is a hard problem, this plan's probably not gonna solve it. This is a hard problem, and we get that there is a lot of strong feelings on each side. Otherwise, it seems just a little kind of, I don't want to use the word whitewash, but just a little, the edges are blunted a little bit. I lean into it, because I think I think controversy is ultimately the servant of the truth, because it gets people talking and, gets people to exchange ideas, so.
But then we don't have to argue about what he didn't include. It's there, we can start talking about.
That's exactly, that's probably even a better point. But in my opinion, I think that's actually probably a better point, because there's an agenda that there's a reason why we're not acknowledging the conflict that exists here. What's the reason? And you could weaponize either side of that debate and lose focus on what we're really trying to accomplish here.
Yeah, which is to address it.
Exactly.
But we could make this sentence a positive end and in recognition of the fact that they really not identified it and brought it to front and center by also saying that, we recognize that the chapters are highlighting all the really important things about Flagstaff, but you need to get here, like, you've done a really good job of partitioning everything out into little sections, but you gotta mess it up and mash it together, which has not happened in the document. It really was very separated. I kept wondering, like, how are you gonna do all this? Like, where's the teeth to make sure you have open space in all this urban development, or where's the teeth in making sure that you have access in all this urban development? Like, it's gonna be hard.
That's impossible.
It's impossible. Well, that's okay, but
But it's okay,
if we
but we
say,
can, we can make it better.
do a better job of pointing out that this is a active uphill battle. But you have done a good job of identifying all these really important things about Flagstaff that already exist. You did put that into this document. And then, but no, just say, like, do a better job of acknowledging that there's conflict. However, you did provide really great chapters about the issues, but it doesn't mix it up together, does it?
I didn't think so. It did in places, but it wasn't a consistent overarching theme, which I think is the important part of this. And that overarching theme is that these different issue areas, there are lots of conflict between among them. And if there weren't, then it would be easy.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
We wouldn't need it. And so we have these issues, and that's what we need to planning process to try to address them.
As a current regional plan, like when things come through, like planning and zoning, you can argue both sides. You can argue for the increase in density and the development, and then there's plenty of verbiage that says, well, protect greenfield sites and open spaces and view sheds, and it becomes an impasse situation. And somebody walks away one group walks away very angry at the decision, let's say, of a rezoning case, where if we at least acknowledge it and say, we've got to find a balance, then maybe it gives the opportunity to say, you know what, maybe that is just a little too dense here. Maybe it needs to be medium instead of high. And, a developer would say, yes, I acknowledge that we're going high density, but we're gonna give you a park or foot access, or, I think that's what creates the ability to lean into a really workable regional plan that would make all those pieces come together when it gets down to the nitty gritty, working things out, at that level. So I think forcing this acknowledgement, instead of just leaving it all in separate places where people can pick and choose what works for their narrative is a good thing.
Do you want number 4 and bold? It's good to me.
And I'm really glad the idea that folks have come up with a very specific at a higher level, the idea about what we see as a lack of integration and recognition of those inherent conflicts among the different areas.
That's our letter, right there.
Good idea.
I like lack of integration.
Comprehensive lack of comprehensive integration.
You want me to
It's in places here and there, but
Can we add that as another?
I put that in as a whole.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Just, it kind of restates some of it already, but I think repetitiveness sometimes makes things clearer.
Although there was a lot of repetitiveness in that document, like they would say the same thing twice.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I also thought like,
You can do.
this is very wordy. Like, and it's a little complex and I don't understand what all these little abbreviations and codes mean. I'm trying to go back and what is GLP one?
Yeah.
DP two and
I got a GM1 here and DP1.
yeah, I couldn't, I know I'm not the brightest bulb in the drawer, but like, I was like, man, I gotta like really focus on trying to figure this out and interpret what they mean here. So I thought it was a little complex. I like that point. It makes me think of like the discussions around driving a car, and it seems like the plan is more like, okay, let's talk about the gas pedal, let's talk about tires, let's talk about steering wheel, and we're kind of like overemphasizing individual components and not how they come together and how one can, well, if we have better at this, we don't quite need that potentially. And just the idea that like they recognize this is gonna be a bit of a back and forth and like just leaning into that,
That's a great analogy.
I think that really strikes me.
Like the comprehensive integration.
Yeah, comprehensive integration.
We would like to see, we would like to see we would like to see examples of balancing priorities. So high density housing considers view sheds.
Number 4 could be an example of what we're trying to identify in number 5. To give it a little more specificity.
Well, we could do like high density housing must consider view sheds, purchase of open space, must be balanced with availability of housing or something like that, like.
Maybe number 4 becomes like an A underneath 5, for example, da 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 da.
Yeah, of course.
And, this further emphasis on integration, and, what I always see is like, when cases come before this, they have to list all the goals and policies that they're meeting within the regional plan.
Yeah.
Well, it's super easy for them to pick and choose, and, almost any development can meet the regional plan. But if one of those things that, create housing or create a community or whatever, with open space or with a park or, then it encourages encourages that.
Lack of integration and comprehensiveness between chapter topics or something like that. You need
Yeah.
to bring that
Yeah,
together.
between like topic areas, yes.
I think it was lack of comprehensive integration.
Yeah, lack of comprehensive integration.
Yeah. I would maybe just say topics, not chapter topics, so I don't want to like over index on the format of this, even though it's terrible.
Yeah.
Like the substance is the, like, this is the thing, not, yeah,
Yeah.
and this.
There's not much cross. We,
Yes.
Yeah, make-
Can we say cross pollination?
We could do a whole buzzword thing. if you want. Do it.
Pollinators.
I got a lot. Get synergies in here somewhere.
Love synergies.
I'm doing it within the report. I'm not so sure what report's been.
That's good. I mean, we can wordsmith it more afterwards as long as we get the feeling.
Yeah, so it's good. Let's see
Well,
how
number three can become B.
entities, just to get an idea where we are.
Well, number three can become B. Well, clearly a strong plan related to potential effect on the private sector. I mean, it's, the thing is A, but it just, like, then if we could put that under there, we'll fix it later.
I do see the private sector and community development is always struggling. So it's almost an issue in itself, the struggle between private developers and the community development trying to allow for the development, but meet the things.
Well, that's the lack of comprehensive integration between
That's,
topics right
that's
here.
the reason, but I'm just thinking it's the kind of thing that needs to be specifically stated and not just generally stated. Because those are the two entities that really struggle. On a day-to-day basis, and then I glance at Mary's last. That's my only argument for that, is just that those are the two entities, really, and the day-to-day operations.
Could that example you be moved up to your point under lack of comprehensive integration and maybe capture in that same thing acknowledgement of the, important that work here in terms of, like viewpoints and how some of these issues appear diametrically opposed, and these are points of friction that we have to work through. I'm thinking out loud, I'm not doing a good job, but
No, that's fine with me, if we move 3 down as B, part B of 4.
Yeah, but it's another, I mean, we need to work on it, but it's another example of, I mean, what we're talking about.
yeah, so it's an example of lack of integration, because that is an integration issue, is the private sector and community development values finding like common ground, and I'm using this a lot.
And then I move number 3 to number 1.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, if we're doing this in priority order, that's number 1, right? Like, this thing's not well integrated.
And these other ones, the
I mean,
jargon.
I'm gonna die on the jargon and complex.
It's important and we want to have it, I just think that if we move it, let's get there,
Yeah.
Do you think that number 3 could actually be added in with number 2? Because it's the jargon, the long, and the issue with the word significant.
I agree, yeah.
That's-
There's a lot of key terms that are not defined.
Yeah.
Well. Yeah, that works.
Greenfield.
Yeah, Greenfield.
Definitions, like accepted definitions, of what that means outside of here.
Yeah,
outside of-
and they never defined it, and I was like, I don't know what we're talking about. You speak,
the words that we all think.
Yeah.
right after significant, discrete field is another one of the words that was defined.
And they set a statement means.
Well, wait, significant, I thought that too, I'm like, oh, statistically.
No, but seriously, that's what came into my head first. And, probably not what they mean.
Where rooted the population.
Is number three attempting to say like, hey, this was already addressed in the implementation guidelines, so like we don't need it in the regional plan?
Well, what I'm saying, I just wanted to, I put in the parenthetical statement. Just those, we have it here, yeah, we know it, we have it here. But it's important to put it in the goal as well as the implementation.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
Oh, chapter 8, goal.
So add it, right, so you got it in, okay, I'm track. I see.
Just adding that little phrase into the goal.
Okay, gotcha.
Trying to preempt the criticism.
I know we said 10-minute accessibility to open space. Is there somewhere where it says 15 minutes?
Last meeting.
I think maybe in the Open Space Commission strategic plan, it originally said 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay,
The national standard is like 10 minutes, so I think like that probably makes sense.
so good.
I mean, I just wanted it to match our documents, you know, so there was that consistency.
That's important.
So if it needs to say 10 to 15, that's fine. It's whatever we think is best.
We scroll and see the rest of four.
This was my pet peeve. And I know, you know, part of the issue is by law, they can't require, you know, a developer or landowner to, you know, dedicate open space. But, oh, wait, maybe this was I'm sorry, that was my number 5, never mind, sorry. Number 4.
That number 4, that's another example of the our integration.
Yes, so when I read this part, my issue with it was that it was like, oh, they started to talk about open space, but oh, we don't want to get too far from the housing crisis, so we need to put in this tagline, and that's how I read it, and yes, that's where our contradiction is.
That's great. Put that under 1C or wherever we're at, like an example, you've identified it in the document with your own statements that are, you know, contradicting each other.
So it's like, how do you have open space when you also want a concentrated development area? That didn't jive for me.
Does that need to be moved?
I think it goes under number 1 as a state. That's what I mean.
Yeah, I'm good with these points, because I think it will help the regional plan commission. So basically, we're giving them examples on why we think there's some tweaking that could happen.
This is what I agree with this statement a lot, like, where's the key? Where's the direction? Where's
Right,
the guidelines? I kept looking for that as I was reading it. I'm like, okay, great, we've got this mentioned about recognizing all the support spaces, but then what?
Yeah, how?
Right, and I think it's probably stems from, you know, by state law, they can't require it. So they're stuck a little bit. We know we want it, but how do we get it? If we're not putting it out there that we would like it, to be part of your development, you know, your master plan, community, or your neighborhood, then there's never that expectation. And once those development plans come along and they've already spent the money to draw it out, it's too late. And that was my point on that.
I think that's another example of how they could lean into the process a little bit more. It's something like, we recognize that this is hard because of state laws, but that would, to me, be a lot more powerful. Because here it's easy then to dismiss that whole issue. Well, developers can't find required by state law and we just move on rather than really addressing the issue.
It also makes me feel, and I know this is probably not true because I know people on the commission, but it makes me feel like, well, they didn't even think this through because they'll get more land, like, we need more land. And then stop, full stop, no, like, hey, it's gonna be hard, there are legislative barriers, and by the way, this almost always costs money, and where do we get that? And I just feel like that's kind of a lazy statement. Like, get land, like, we need more, yeah, so I agree, we gotta call it out, like, all right, you said we need it, help us understand, reading this plan, what some of the ideas are, and if they're hard, call that out, like, we're gonna have to work through some significant barriers here. I think that's really important. So maybe it's not like it's just a matter of, like, just decide you want more, and well, we all probably decide that.
Just really have to work and find some.
Yeah, yeah.
Ask the gods to make us.
Okay, so number 4 is D. And we're gonna use it as a statement of recognizing that there are laws to be worked around.
Yeah, we need to do some transitions and connections, say, but that's,
Yeah,
we have the points.
maybe you could, just, we recognize that there are statutory limitations. But that's what we want. That's what we want this document to address.
Does that?
Yeah, and I would start with that. We recognize that this is hard.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, does the, like, we should, like, call the fact out that this is, like, hard and earlier and not as a sub bullet of D, you know what I mean, like,
Right.
up there at number 1, after our lack of integration somewhere. And, something, and the inherent difficulty in balancing these
Of balancing
multiple priorities or something like that.
statutory limitations and the desires of the Open Space Commission.
I see where you're going on that, but my opinion with the committee is if you give them an out and the situation requires it, they'll take that out. So this would be an out, oh, yes, this is very difficult, so we'll have to go this way. I think your original thought is, that I agree with, is that we don't have to acknowledge to the city, you got a tough job. I think we have to acknowledge to achieve this is a tough job. There's a difference. At least the way I was reading that was saying, okay, city, we really know this is a tough job. Do the best you can. Whereas I would just like to say, we recognize it's a tough job, period.
Maybe even
That's about as clear as I can be.
Yeah, what about more directive? You will have to work through some inherently difficult
I like that.
mandate,
Yeah.
mandated. I mean, we're just an advisory board.
Yeah.
No, it's true though.
It is true. I mean, that's our recommendation.
We don't want them to throw up their hands and go, well, we can't require it.
Yeah, right. I mean, we don't want to build it. I
But,
see.
you know,
We don't want to put
yeah.
excuses in there for them.
Yeah.
Right, take out
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
statutory limitations.
Yeah.
Inherently different qualities need to be balanced by this document.
We can wordsmith it, right?
Yeah, and then it's a bunch of for examples, and that's where the ABCD. So we've done some of the work for them. You know, here's 4 examples. Four examples.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fun. When I came to this meeting, I was thinking, man, this is gonna be tough. But I think we're moving down the right direction, especially by boiling it down to one kind of topical item. We may be able to figure another name, but right now, I think that's that topical item, I think, I'm involved with some other plan to other things like that. That's exactly what they're saying too. So this might bring strongly in the minds of the drafters of this plan because it's repeated.
Are you okay with the language of that?
Yeah, we're gonna work on that later.
Okay. So, round number 4.
That was my question. I just didn't know if that would come up when they presented it to you. I know the whole, ponderosa pines and the fire risk and all of that is a very hot topic. Tree resources are a hot topic. We're talking about it, planning and zoning on Wednesday, which I'll get to. But I just wondered why, why that. I mean, I think as a community, as residents of the area, I think those, the forest that we live among is considered a fairly important natural resource. Again, also, there's some inherent conflict in that in the name of fire. I don't know, just wanted to put it out there.
Not that there's a history to that. It kind of died about 2 years ago, but for about 7 or 8 years, the conservation forum. And it was a group of scientists and other folks that are interested in resource protection. And they got to the point where there were ordinances that were going to come for the planning and zoning department. And the guy that was on the city staff that was chairing that took a job somewhere else. And then it just died. So almost 10 years of working on that just stopped. The information is there somewhere. But mapping,
Well,
the whole idea was mapping the various resources from rock outcroppings, the animal pathways to the tree, to the slopes.
Do we want to make this like a recommendation as to include information about?
Yes,
We just like leave the question there for them to address at their
Question?
Yeah,
Yes.
or
we're noticing, that there's some natural resources that were left off.
they did put springs on there, but they may have left it off because they don't want people to know where like goshawks nests are or, Gunnison prairie dog colonies are. I have no idea, but there may have been
You give them a lot of credit.
I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
well, I see 4, 5, and 6, and I'm not denigrating at all. These are technical issues that we have with the plan. Okay. Large ponderosa pine and prairie dogs, we didn't see where they were mapped and recognized. Maintenance of recreation open spaces, we didn't see enough about maintenance. Another technical issue we identified was that to put more emphasis on the trail system to reduce carbon emissions. Which is different than our number 1, which is just huge.
Yeah, I see like, I'm with you 100% here. I see 3 like areas, right? Like the linking and integration. The second one is reduce, jargon, clarify, whatever. And I think actually 3 could move up and be an example of how the plan isn't clear in that it offers a doesn't offer like, well, this should also be a goal if we have the implementation, like use that as an example of the lack of clarity in the plan, like in terms of complexity. And then this third one can be, maybe something along the lines of, omissions or something like, technical questions that we can say, for example, like, or did you catalog resources completely? And because we noticed that these two things weren't mentioned, and then, what's the emphasis? So we have like three thematic areas rather than like a big old thing and then a kind of a micro point that maybe gets lost because it doesn't follow this kind of example of like, we're coming at this thematically, right?
And I took that off of, when I went back and looked at what was in your meeting last time, Sarah's PowerPoint, and it was the natural resources, and then it said not mapped. And those were the two things, and I was like, why are they not mapped? So maybe there was an explanation that was given to you
Right.
that I didn't hear, but anyway, that's why that's where I got it from, and that's where my question came from.
Right down Route 66 in Enterprise.
That would be a map like all the other maps, the trail maps, the areas zoning, not zoning maps, but how properties are used, industrial
Mhm.
and a resource map.
Well, it had springs. I noticed that the springs are on two
Yeah,
different maps.
Yeah.
But that's the resource map. There was no other like resource map in the way of like,
There was a resource map though?
no, springs were included on two of the maps. And
Oh, I see.
that was like a natural resource that I saw, but there were no maps of natural resources beyond springs.
Do you think there should be a separate map like
Will it be,
that has resources?
if we're asking development companies or contractors to use this document, I don't know. And for them to be like, oh, it's been identified, people will all see this public document and they know where their Gunnison prairie dog colonies are. It seems like it might just highlight it.
I think so. I think
Escarpments.
Yeah, I think my gut feeling and from watching some of the other city council meetings is that it probably has something to do with the whole fire wildland management plan, as far as how to handle fire risk. They probably maybe don't want it in the plan, so it gives them the leeway and the flexibility to make a wildland fire plan that works. That's my guess. So, but it doesn't mean that we can't name that these are natural resources here to the community.
Well, I don't see a map a map of resources. And I define what the resources are, is a threat to the fire prevention and fire effort at all.
Well, remember when they chopped all those trees behind Buffalo Park in order to build that retention basin or the one up by the Y? Definitely had a lot of big pondos dropped for those.
Yep.
And that was fire wise, and maybe there was some outcry, or maybe that, I think that's,
But documenting it doesn't prevent things, at least it acknowledges that it's there, and that's all I'm after, is acknowledge these exist.
Right.
And that would be part of the integrated planning, I think. A map of that type.
And I don't know really anything about the prairie dog colonies. Are they an endangered species, or is that something that prevents development?
well,
or-
you have got some prairie dogs, you might have black-footed ferrets, but they usually carry plague, which is
Yeah,
what the city's game and fish is constantly dealing with, even in this in these urban areas.
That's usually not seen as a plus.
That's not seen as a plus, but the fact that they're the only food source for black-footed ferrets, which do not exist in Flagstaff city limits and in very few places in Arizona.
They're so bloody cute.
Pardon?
They're so bloody cute.
Oh, they are. They're both.
but I still think some kind of map that shows, you could almost take Google Earth and turn it into a black and white drawing that would show it, and it's not saying you can't develop here or anything like that, it's just saying it exists.
Yeah.
And it can be part of the integrating effort.
Yeah, I think pointing out, we just have a question, like, why weren't they included? Like, is there, and maybe there is a bigger reason and they can answer that. I think I think these are great thematic areas, like integration, reduce complexity and jargon. And then here's some things we noticed that might not be there, might be reasons, but let's call them out.
So if I can ask a clarifying question real quick, so in this 3A here, are we sticking with the Ponderosa Pines and Prairie Dog, or was there additional resources that we wanted to mention?
It's an example of natural.
Yeah, like, why don't we, do we want to say, for example, Ponderosa Pines and Prairie Dog colonies weren't mapped, you know?
Okay.
I don't think we need to go through.
I would put a higher priority on escarpments, hillsides and things for prairie dogs myself, because some of the mentions was here. They'll come and they'll go. They migrate.
And there is a little bit about some steep slopes.
I think that was
That's
named,
right.
In some place.
yeah, I think the slopes and the firewires, like the springs, I think those were named in her.
Spring stuff in order. All right,
Sorry,
Perfect,
I'm not great at it, sorry.
No, no worries.
So are we doing escarpments in here? Or no?
yes.
What about escarpments? Are there other items?
Why they're not massive experiments too, because we want to highlight them.
So for example, why are the large stands on the pine, escarpments, lift a whole bunch of them and then end with match.
You could say springs,
Springs.
the springs are on other maps, but they on the other map.
Yeah,
Well, the springs are mapped, though.
yeah, they are actually, right?
Okay. So I don't think we want to.
Yeah.
well, but it's pretty far, it'd be nice, even if it's repetitive, it'd be nice to have a map with all of the resources.
So we're saying they're comprehensive resource maps. For example, the resource maps don't include this. Because a lot of it, there's some here, some down here, they're not all in one place. Is that what?
Yes, I think so, yep.
Because there are other good comprehensive maps which are the housing develop, future development, and with a big shaded area over the southern part of the, no one can big, you can have that over here.
The road map is big headed.
Even Southwood.
There is a significant natural resource map.
You can take up the second sentence, that is not included in natural resources wild area, and just say, please, why is there not a comprehensive resource?
But it's comprehensive because, as you were pointing out, there is a map called the significant natural resource map. The only thing it has on it are the springs.
Yeah, I know, that's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
that's the only thing.
What's the problem with the definition of significant?
Well, that one's at the 0.1, significant development.
Yeah.
0.5 has.
Yeah.
Everything else.
All right, in the interest of time, are we feeling pretty good about, so we got 3 broad thematic areas with examples of each. Everybody feel pretty good about what we're here?
I do, I think the letter could be drafted to include some of the positive things we noticed, but we're gonna provide them.
Yeah, but these are specifically, we're talking specifically here, because we do have whole positive.
Right, yeah, no, I think
Yeah.
it's great, I think.
Yeah.
Mine is a little.
Okay,
Can I ask you for clarification on the last one? Sorry, I just changed the verbiage a little bit. So I did not maps. Are these not included as natural resources in wildlife? The significant natural resources map should be comprehensive. No. So you guys are trying.
Yes.
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 And then I did have one other question that I wrote down here. We were talking about the word significant a lot, and I just wondered if we were trying to provide clarification in this document on that word or what we have.
No, it is defined, and I should have written it down, but I forgot. But not until fairly late in the plan. And it's used a lot without, early on in the plan with no definitions. And it's like Greenfield, what do you mean by significant?
Yeah, I think, isn't it number 2?
Yeah, it's in our jargon.
Yeah, we was that part, but in the plan itself, it was driving me nuts.
And I think better defined captured, which is, it's defined but late, and it would be better to define them with their first use.
That's pretty normal.
So,
I desperately want to say something about all the DLPs, and GP dots and everything else, but hopefully reduce complexity or make it something,
Jargonish.
yeah.
I have to
Robert, I
say,
talked about, but this is a plan for planners.
but what I really like is that we all identified the conflict in when we were reading it, and that, I love the first thing that we've come up with, because I spent the whole time seeing that there was just canceling each other out the whole time I was reading it, and it's really cool that we were able to identify that.
Right, if we're all in agreement that we've done this, item 6B is the
I
project.
think for this one, I did make it a decision. I apologize.
Go ahead.
So I think we need to make that motion.
We do, okay.
Yeah.
All right, all in favor of the input that we have for the Flagstaff regional plan, say aye. Any opposed?
No.
All right,
So
approved.
where does it go? Okay, Robert, you.
That's actually a valid question. I was kind of asked the commission what kind of follow-up they'd like to hear back from the committee. So if you could provide, maybe provide estimates.
No, actually, just a point of order. I got that there was a motion by Chair Applin to approve the comments. Did we have a second?
Oh, sorry, if we did not. Anybody second that motion?
And then did I hear that there was one no vote?
No, I'm saying there was no.
Okay,
Just-
thank you. Sorry to interrupt that.
That's important.
And I have this problem, and I'll take it on myself and not involve the commission. But the two prologue that come before everything, horribly written. And it's not, I think, the job of the commission to try to rewrite it. But for some individual who has a bee in his bonnet, that's what I will do. It's, but now it's
Are you talking about chapter 7 or chapter 8?
seven chapter you deal with
The first two parts, okay.
where, where is it? Well, there are two parts to it. One, something about, and they're required by Arizona revised statute. You have to say, what do you have now? Then you have to say, what are you looking for in the future?
Okay.
And then two big paragraphs.
Mhm.
talking. They're awful. So, from my opinion, my humble opinion.
I'm sure they would appreciate it.
So, and I did that in February when they first came out, sent it to Sarah. And she said, we'll look at that later on. And so I regurgitate that on my own, because I have a dialogue going. But I wanted to let
Would it
you
be
know.
worthwhile to take what you had given them that you haven't seen implemented and still make it part of our commission's recommendation? Because you were there on behalf of the commission, you and Mike at the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just so that we have sort of a paper trail of your recommended rewrite of it.
I guess I don't want to complicate things then. I just wanted to be, what I'll do is I'll share it with you, but I'll send to her. Not as a request for a recommendation from the commissioner or anything. But, you know, when we edit to something, you edit it, and then you give it to somebody else, somebody will edit it, and then somebody will, I'll edit it in a way that they can take it or leave it, or they can use bits and pieces of it, or whatever. But I'll preface it with the point that, I think that, they're not addressing the title of each of the prologues.
I'm just wondering, like with all the revisions and comments that, I don't want that to get lost along the way. And if we actually put it as a sort of a second addendum to our comments, you know, that you know, the original
Yeah.
two participants from open space still have some revisions that they were hoping to see implemented.
I see what you're saying. It gives it a little more force, I get
Like,
it.
don't forget.
But on the other hand, I'm just trying to avoid that we don't get into a big wordsmithing thing as far as the commission is.
Yeah, it's just gonna, I mean, we've called out the lack of, like, number two is kind of like, it's not super clear, it needs to be kind of rewritten.
Yeah.
And I wonder if this falls under that, because I do think we're in danger of not getting through the rest of the agenda if we try to tackle that.
No, I wouldn't say that we needed to review
Oh,
what
gotcha.
Nat wrote. I just said what Nat wrote at the time and gave hasn't been implemented or shown up yet. And just as a reminder that that was an additional point that came from two members of our commission early on in the process.
Is that an omission? Do we put that under the third theme, you know,
Well, what I sent back in February was the response to what they had written as their draft. But what's in the final one is almost the same, but it's not quite the same, so my rewrite would have to be refreshed from February. So, we've already voted on it. I should have brought it up earlier. It could have been an E. Please approve the introduction to chapter 8. That's basically what that's all about. That if I were a developer to read it, I would say, well, if I provide a little space for a city garden, I'll be all right. You know, the balance and everything in it was totally out. It was just all of the open space should be city garden. And then it talked about the geography of the area, and it missed all kinds of points. But, well, you guys can read it. My point is, I just wanted to let you know I was going to do this and follow through on what I did in February. Your point is there any way the commission can support that? And I just don't want it to get bogged down, commission bogged down, and I appreciate that comment.
well, certainly as a private citizen, correct me if I'm wrong, you can make any of what you want. right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe that's-
But I'll share it with you.
Yeah, okay, I think you can also do that, right, just like anybody can share things.
Yeah.
Okay, well, with that, since we voted on this, 6B, project prioritization and multi-year project planning, and this is both, this is an informational discussion item. You want to take that?
Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, so the last couple of meetings, we went through the prioritization process of looking at projects that could be funded by the fund allocations. And so for this meeting, we'd actually like you to go through that process and rank them 1 through 10. 1 being the least important, 10 being the most important. And then we will use that to create a draft of a capital project plan for a 5-year plan, similar to the Parks and Recreation. And use that we'll bring that back to you. So if you are working on your phone, there's a QR code there. I also just sent the activity link to emails, and then I also shared the meeting here. So one of the 3 ways that you should be able to open a page that says Open Space Commission Prioritization Active Files. And if you have questions. After everybody's done with this link, I'm going to throw up a list.
So the intent, just to make it clear, each project, give it a 1 through 10 ranking. You don't have to put them in any sort of order.
And as we go through this, is everything that was on your list here, is it going to be represented in here? This,
That is an old list.
okay, that's an old one.
So then
Also
the
kind of
first list, and I'll throw it up here for you, is.
I think we need the QR code still.
I can't open this. Current list is alphabetical rather than it being separate.
So I go there or here?
In the white.
So whatever.
Okay, so just click on this link.
And then they, yeah.
So. What's out of there? Right.
I created.
Awesome.
You, will we eventually be able to get reasons?
I think you can have discussion, but right now, we really just want your initial thoughts on a review.
Because some of them were complicated. You mentioned, do this, do this, do this, do this. And one,
Do you name?
10 for this, 4 for that.
Okay.
I think, keep in mind,
It's not like.
This is just a
we're working on a $400,000 budget and we're gonna, this is really just to provide us some input on what you think is important. We're not gonna be able to fund everything. And so for us to know what you think is like top priority, that's what we're trying to find, because that's where we're gonna put money. We're not gonna be able to put money towards everything on this list.
So 10 is the highest.
10 is something that you think is very important, top priority. Please don't give everything a 10.
And just to refresh the commission's mind on this, we did not include acquisition on this, even though that was identified as one of the top priorities. So we will be working that in the plan that we'll bring back.
So 10 is the high priority one, the low priority. Okay, I'm just gonna look through all of this.
Robert, I sent you a copy because I knew I wasn't gonna bring my computer of my rankings. So I
That's
sent
good,
that today.
because my computer thinks that me trying to rewrite the
Okay.
form.
You can do it.
Yeah.
Oh, me? Yeah, or I can enter it for you, but if you prefer to do it, that way it's all in the same system.
When it says, observatory makes a property restoration, does that mean decommissioning existing trails, or is that in the Mesa Trail plan?
That's the chip.
The shipping, okay.
Typically.
Yeah.
The description's up on the screen. Oh, I'm sorry.
Need me to
Thank
scroll.
you.
Yeah.
Sure. Hey, Robert.
Yeah.
There's a question about in the picture canyon, LSD trail.
Yeah.
Where is that?
If you're coming down the switchbacks on the Dunleavy Trail, at the corner of one of the switchbacks, there's a big boulder. And on the backside of the boulder, there's some rock right there. There's a pre-built default, so they're already. So it'd be formalizing that trail.
What's in the area of the Schultz game? It was, I was just looking for something, is it just the switch?
Property switch, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, it'd be,
not
it's a property trade, which is actually, was approved by city council. But also a design nature of it for that.
such as trash service and the restaurants, okay.
Is this the same titles as you sent out before? In November?
No, the list is, the list up here is current,
It's alphabetized.
it's just alphabetized.
Oh, so.
Yeah. And then this is triple the main, or this was that like all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean.
Okay.
That's great.
Picture Canyon River Drive Bridge and the Jet Welch Memorial. Would, yeah, is that,
We did talk to them about that, we talked to the placement of the bridge teacher, so the artwork they're designing. It meant to be really, like.
should be either whether it gets separated or not. Yeah.
Can you show me our Mesa Trail canopy buffer? Please? Mesa Trail, McMillan Mesa, sorry.
It would not stay on unless I did that Microsoft sign.
I mean, we do need your name.
So I submitted, do I need to save my response in order for you to see it on your end or something?
I think you do.
It'll let you submit.
We have to sign into Microsoft first.
I didn't do that. That's what I was wondering. It was gonna make me do that to save it, but it said your response was submitted. Let me know if I need to sign it myself.
It's not too hard to ask you to redo it. Or tell us your.
Yes.
I mean, go ahead and save it if that's what you for you to do.
I probably didn't write these. Yeah.
Yes.
I see here. I did not try it. I want to get now. You just have it. I can sign in using another Microsoft. You're just looking to see if you got it.
Yes. Oh, okay. Since I got a response from rejected.
Oh, good. I think you can open it up.
It's I got one from you, okay. I got one from Mary.
Okay. And Miss Bruce said one.
I haven't got that one yet.
You have not got one?
Yeah.
It said it said saved and then said your response is negative again. Yeah.
So I have one response. So yes, so maybe. It's just, oh. Okay. Let's go again. Did you not finish?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I'll send this out to, sorry. Oh, Leah, you want-
So yeah, since Lena had to leave early, Robert, let's set up some time to get through this with her. As well.
Oh, excuse me.
Did you go out?
Yeah.
I'm just take on that already done. And then all it was done. And she resolved all this issues and Sean makes it so stupid. Okay.
Okay. So all that information will be got us, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do it. Let's do it. If I still on the deletion.
On the notes, you mean that they were just working on?
Yes.
Did I submit? Did I submit? Okay. Can you confirm that you got it? 5?
Oh my goodness.
You did it.
Yeah, nice. Thank you all very
Yeah,
much.
5 responses, and then we'll get it.
Yeah.
So in January, we do have a very full meeting planned for you, but we will do a quick update to show you at least the top 10 as we're working to just to show you the results.
Thank you.
And do we have a date for that next meeting? I'm sure I have it right because I did. Right.
We got a item on the agenda to discuss just that. Next a little bit. All right, so we're down to 6B.
Yes.
You go over things. Great. Okay, next item on the agenda is reports and updates, starting with the council representative report from Council Representative Deborah Harris.
She was not able to join.
Okay, next then is the planning and zoning commission representative report from Commissioner Hill.
Yeah, a couple things I wanted to share. Since we're very in tune to what happens along the JW Powell corridor, last week, the council meeting would be worth a watch. It was September 3rd. You can watch it on their, the recording from their YouTube channel. And I would watch it all with regard to the JW Powell development agreement. that were approved with all of the major large landowners. And walked it through the public discussion because there was also some back and forth and some interesting questions and discussion answered at that point. Couple things just to share with you. There was a commitment of a foot trail under the new portion of the Fourth Street JWP through Canyon Del Rio. So that was kind of something new that obviously came out of their discussion and negotiations for that particular DA. There's 3 DAs. There was discussion of wildlife, small animals through box culverts, and the elk with an at-grade crossing with lights and directional fencing that I thought was interesting to hear about. Keep in mind that these DAs were pretty much just with regard to the right of way for the streets. So there was mention that later would be the discussion for open space and parks and things like that. So one thing that has come up already with the community, a neighbor, is that there's already been comments and inquiries about our trail users across the parcels. And how do we ensure that we get communication and input to the correct sources regarding the trails and future foots and access across these lands and the Arizona Trail impacts while development now begins. Once, obviously it's private land, there's dangers involved of people hiking through development areas under construction. I advise somebody to email you, Robert, thinking that it would, maybe you would compile those sorts of things. What would be the direction that we could give to community members that are saying, this trail got ruined or this trail got blocked for me?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I already have received an email about this particular corridor and I'd like to change in access. So, but I think also Martin's should probably know about this as well. And I was gonna also forward that email to our community development.
Okay, that's kind of what I advise, is to send it to you and maybe see Martin and Rebecca. Rebecca sits in on some of those in the departmental approvals. Secondly, their council approved a rezoning down off of Lake Mary Road, south of JW Powell and Lake Mary. One of the end results during the process was the addition of foots connectivity from the area north, and it actually is marked on our planning foots system map as a future foot. So that came out of the discussion. So just an FYI on that.
That's the development off of Lake Mary Road.
Off of like Frontier and Big Island. So that was redone to high density. Planning and zoning actually recommended denial because there were a lot of questions, and one of the items was lack of infrastructure down there and connectivity. So obviously, as it went along the process, that did get addressed a little bit, and they did offer to build the foots trail from there up to connecting to where it does end at JW Powell. So that did come out of the discussion. And then thirdly, on Wednesday, this kind of fits in with some of the things that we were discussing today. We have a work session regarding natural resources and the percentage and discussing that maybe the percentage of national resources, like with regard to trees, that percentage would be worked out after areas where roads would go would be not counted. So just if you have any thoughts on that, and you want to be part of that, or that coaching you may go through, just want to give you a heads up.
Maybe I should send it. But I'll send it to you definitely. And I have a meeting with Tiffany. And it's a 4-page quote white paper.
Yeah.
On the resource. RPOs. Resource protection overlay, thank you. And the history of it, how it came about. And also tries to address some of the comments about fire and comments about limiting development. Been in place for 30 years.
Right.
So and the premise is, if you read, protection to allow, be able to build more houses.
Correct. Yeah, correct. And they're having, especially on harder parcels, as we have limited land space to build on and develop. Some of the parcels are to build on with regard to resources and rock escarpments and slope and things like that. And so to make these parcels developable, you know, there's some wiggling happening. Let's say other than that.
You don't have to do, go up Woodlands Boulevard and go up University Drive, and that's all done under the resource protection. I don't know if you want any denser property development than you have there. And the big high rise in the back of Walmart, that was all built underneath the LPO. I'll share with you a comment was made to me in regards to that by a local developer that develops all over the state. And he said, if you read the requirements and understand the requirements ahead of time, you can build almost exactly what you want, very economic. And I've heard that from the older community development people that develop who come in without looking at resource protection. And now they develop the whole planet, and then they say, we may not get your build there because you got this. And this big developer was saying, you look at it first, the developer will fit in. But that's part of my way.
So this could change in that after roads were installed, then they consider natural resources versus considering natural resources before.
Correct. So when they do the figuring of what the 50% like tree protection is, it would normally be the whole site. Well, like usually like for density, you know, obviously there's a lot of roads and not a lot of land left because you're trying to fit a lot in, you know. The roads would, the land and what that would become the roads would count, whatever trees were removed on the street and roads would not count. So
Why is this coming up after so long? And like maybe since to try to encourage it, increase housing. To make it possible to build and to have more density and, yeah. And you know, it's kind of what we were just talking about, the conflicts, you know.
It's an easy thing for the development to argue to do just what I said. Come in with the development before you look at the resource protection. And then complain, you're not allowing it to develop because of resource protection. Reading the resource protection guidelines and then surveying it. And then developing plans, and then developing big developer that works all the time.
And there's some really wise pivoting happening where, you know, instead of, you know, trees across the whole parcel, you know, saving clusters, you know, that aren't near houses. And a lot of times when those ponderosas are left right next to a building, within several years, they die anyway. We bring that in my neighborhood, we'd spend thousands of dollars as an HOA every year to remove ponderosas that continue to die that were left too close, you know, the buildings when it was developed. So there's, you know, and I think that's a really workable solution is to where the resource protection gets placed on a site. It'll be interesting to see, you know, what the work session and the information presented to us about this new
So there are workable solutions, and that's what he's saying too.
And that kind of sounds like, what you're saying. But you're right, they often just look at the parcel itself and then design, the site plan.
Then afterthought.
And sometimes it may, yeah. Anyway, that's all I had.
Thank you. Open space management report. Barbara or Sylvia?
Your thing, Fisher, so.
Nope, we've been working on, we're coming into winter, so we're trying to work on some winter projects, but we have another full moon night coming up on Sunday, the 15th at 5 p.m. at Buffalo. On social media, we have 101 people interested.
Nice.
But they've been increasing a lot lately. We've been having 30 and 50 people.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice. That's great.
Congratulations, that's great.
There is, and I talked too much, but there's a new trail up
The back end of Buffalo
at the
Park.
back end of Buffalo Park, and you gotta walk it. It is just beautiful, and it replaces a pretty old trail that was put in by somebody. But it's the kind of trail that even the amblers on Buffalo Park could just amble off with a family and go down that trail and enter into Paradise Valley.
So look at this. We're having a trail cutting soon, like this weekend maybe. Because it's FBO that paid for all that trail.
Well, they didn't pay for it, they got the money.
They got the money, yeah, they got the money.
$97,000 locally.
Thank you. Next item is the pros monthly newsletter. There are two this time since we skipped to November, so October and November.
Yeah, I don't, you guys have any questions, well, let me know. I do have a couple of other items, real quick. The McMillan Mesa Signage project that we applied for the grant from the Arizona State Parks. Went through 2 of the 3 necessary review periods and have been recommended for funding. It will go through the ADOT approval during the next, in the spring, I believe. And if that passes that, then we will have funding for that.
What is the project?
For timing for McMillan Mesa.
So it just says one more stage to go through.
And then, just inform the commission that the access consideration through Observatory Mesa through section 6, we did take that down to the state board park, and they did approve consideration of or construction of that road. Essentially. Our next steps will be to submit the project to the State Historic Preservation Office to get any comments on the proposed concept currently. And then once that is finalized, the private property owners will finalize that construction plan, and they'll submit it through this phase process.
Can you remember all of our quote conditions and where they ended up by the time they went down south? I mean, did
The city council,
the city council?
they did not take a formal vote on that, but they did recommend for the state park board to consider the alignment through section 6 and the state park board. But it was my understanding that council was interested in seeing all of the commission's recommendations here.
So then did the state say that they were accepting of those conditions or they were?
We didn't even get into their conditions.
Oh,
Because it was really about the construction of the road that they were looking at approving, as opposed like the amendment of the easement is really city's amendment. to the easement. So what we'll do is we'll amend it, you can include like all the language in the current easement and then add the conditions to that.
That last item is the Great Lakes. Yeah.
Mine was appointed to the commission at the last council meeting, so I'll officially be here in the next meeting in January. And in January, we discussed the commission, which we can talk about in a moment here. But I also wanted to mention that in February, we'll have a joint meeting with the Parks and Recreation Commission to go through meeting. And then also, we did invite community development to come to a presentation for both commissions on the land use study. And I know that the commissioners already heard presentation on that, but it would be updating everything that's new. So if you had questions, or comments that you guys are thinking about, good time.
Anything from commissioners to staff? Great. Final item before adjournment is potential future agenda items. Next meeting is scheduled for January 27th, 2024. Right now, the only item on the agenda is the observatory, Mr. President.
Yeah, I think we'll add one about that top 10 that we just did do the exercise this evening. And then the other item would be the observatory to travel. We did a census of all the community feedback from this last third plan. It is on our website. I'd encourage you to get on there and take a look at it. If you go to open space and then click on the link that says observatory mission trail plan, it has it right there. That's the input synthesis from November 2020. So take a look at that. That'll be the bulk of our presentation to the commission in January.
Great. Any other suggested items for future agenda? Right. We are at time and are prepared to adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I will to adjourn.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Good job.
Oh,
Thank you, everybody, for your thinking on that, really.
Thanks for.
It was good.